I practice contemplation. That's the main thing, because I think there is no one time that we can connect to God. Every minute is the time that you spend with God. So what I do in most cases is that I take a minute and think about God and his relationship to people and me. I also believe that contemplation can connect me to other people, because religion or knowing God is not about knowing somebody up higher in heaven. It is knowing the person that is closer to me, because I think we know God through other people. And so that's the reason why I like contemplation more than other things. Prayers actually are part of contemplation, and I do not, in most cases, I do not practice fasting, but I do pray every minute. Even if I'm walking, I do pray. So that's the spiritual discipline that I practice.
I've met with God for an hour every day in the quiet place of the Bible building. I spent some time in meditation, some time in prayer, some time in Bible study. And through that experience, I was able to just hear God's voice, a personal connection with Him. He became bigger to me, like the way that doubt and faith work together is so often, doubt strengthens faith and builds it up and makes it deeper than it was before. And so that experience with solitude, which had been inspired by so many people, different people in my life before that, really was an eye-opening experience for me. It totally deepened my faith and gave me a lot of hope for the future of how I could deal with struggles that I might have in the future, and how much activity there is in the life of faith, and that was encouraging and inspiring to me.
From time to time, I mean, it's just whenever I get time, I'll pray. I've started recently just trying to pray throughout the day if possible. Just something will come up and I'll just pray for that. I had an interview today and I prayed right before I went into it. Prayer is one of the biggest things I practice. And then I've been trying to read my Bible. That doesn't always happen like I'd like it to. But when I do get a lot out of it. I was reading Robert Morris's The Blessed Life. I go to Beltway. And back in May, before I left for study abroad, the preacher was talking about it, and so I decided to pick it up. And it's about tithing. And recently, I actually did my first legitimate tithe, and I feel like it's something that's really going to bless my life. I know it's not all about what you get out of it, but just giving back to God and the joy I felt when I actually put it into the tray and all that. So I think tithing is going to be. Hopefully this semester is going to be one of the big things for me to start doing with my spiritual life. Other than that, none that I really practice on a regular basis.
One that I've tried to practice more recently within the last couple of years is I've tried to kind of develop the practice of simplicity, of trying to live a life where I'm not necessarily, it's all my resources go towards me and what I want and what I need, but instead going towards kind of other things that I believe in or things that I think I should either devote my time or my resources towards. Kind of a more direct way that I practice that would be that I've taken a couple of job choices that are not big earners, but allow me to do some kingdom work.
It makes me talk to God more. I feel like I know my spiritual life probably back in the spring wasn't where I want it to be, and when I start praying, I feel more connected to God. I think the tithing's brought me back closer to God. I've started actually looking at the scriptures that we talk about at church here the past couple of weeks and just trying to, hit it harder and try to connect with the passage more. And it's really brought me closer to God, I feel like, and I feel like I'm connecting more with God, and my relationship with God is a lot better than it was, say, probably a year ago.
I think as I feel closer to other human beings and what they feel, I feel closer to God. As I told you earlier, that God is not higher up there. It is the other person that is sitting with me, talking with me. That's the image of God, and that's how I feel closer to God. On the other hand, when I think about God and not get attracted to other things that might not be good for other human beings and myself, I believe that God is the creator of what I see here in this world. Then I think about what I will get later on when I die.
It's been good for me to realize that God really is the one who is the provider. And any kind of resources that I do have, any money that I earn, ultimately doesn't belong to me. In the end, it's His. And so, with that in mind, it's led me to kind of look for where should I be investing my resource? What would He do with that kind of money? And not in a cliche kind of WWJD kind of way, but in a what does He care about? What is and what has He called me to care about?
I think one of the most important ways that I connect with God is through service. I have been a teacher for the past 6 years, and now that I don't do it to get paid for it, I really feel like I connect with God whenever I volunteer my time to teach. When I was getting paid, I still felt like that. In fact, it's kind of also about using the gifts that I've been given, and so when I feel empowered with a gift that I've been given and then I use it, I can really just sense God's presence with me. I connect with Him through using His gifts in service to Him.
Really, during study abroad, I just tried to think about how I see God, like, on a regular basis, and I came to appreciate, like, especially because you see different cultures over in Europe, and I just appreciated what I have and the fact that that my parents provide everything I need for me, and God's blessed me with that, and just the fact that I can appreciate what I have and know that God's going to get me through the day. I kind of had a rough time in Europe. I lost some money to the airline, and I kept praying about it, and I was like, well, God, you've gotten me this far, and it's not like you're just going to leave me behind. It's just one thing that happened, and I know you're going to get me through it. And just thinking about trying to see God in instances maybe where the bad things happen, that, hey, God's still there. God's going to get me through this. And, I mean, if I trust in Him, everything's going to be all right.
Jesus says that that whatever you do for the least of these, you've done for me, and all that. And he basically, tells us that the least of these are Him incarnate. And so what I've tried to do is both spend time in fellowship with other Christians and other believers and people who can encourage me and build me up, but also spend time in fellowship with people who do not necessarily share my worldview or my kind of same background and stuff like that, and find where Jesus is there and what and how he's present in them. I'm really not sure. I know that sometimes I think for myself and people who are kind of my peers, presence is probably one of the most important things that they can do, just because I don't know, when it comes to spiritual practices, I feel like I don't personally learn a whole lot from like a class kind of situation with them where they're telling us how to better live, in spiritual ways. But instead, I need to be, or it means a lot more, and it develops a lot more when I can see that, and when it's part of, rather than just saying, okay, now this time is for God and this is going to be the spiritual stuff and this one isn't. If there's kind of a meeting together and saying, this is, these are the ways that spiritual practices interweave right into the rest of my life.
I think we need prayer more than anything. Before I came to ACU, I thought, I've come to camps and it's just going to be like camp. It's going to be a spiritual high the whole time. As completely the opposite. I think college students at ACU definitely need prayer more than anything, just to keep growing in their spiritual life. Because honestly, I felt at times that my spiritual life has been lower than any other times in my life since coming to college, just because of time. I think Satan puts time in our lives as a barrier to God. I've got so much to do today, and I don't have time to read my Bible. I don't have time to pray. But I think praying for students could be the biggest thing, or even meeting with them if I met with a professor who asked me about spiritually how I'm doing, I think I would be better for it. I went to Leadership Summit this year, and I was talking to Dr. Lytle, who's dean of the business school, and we talked about spiritual things, how spiritual life was going, and it really brought me up. I never had really talked to a professor really about spiritual things other than a Bible professor maybe. So it was nice to be able to talk about how my life's going spiritually, how church is making an impact on my life here. So
I would say exposing them to a variety of resources like I was shown, that was really helpful to me, to see a lot of different ways people have thought about things that I hadn't heard or seen before. That was really great. I also think that the very practice of teaching at ACU is a statement in saying that I can hold on to these academic beliefs, but I can also hold on to my Christian faith, and that my faith is big enough for that. And somehow finding ways to express that interweaving of faith and any kind of other study, and showing how they connect and work together, not separating faith from life, but showing how they connect in your own personal life. That just really, that always has connected with me. I never minded when professors would tell a story about their own life and about how that had connected with, how they'd connected with God and how they'd connected with their study, and just, even their own personal story of faith. Those kinds of things, I think, were really impacting to me as an undergraduate and continue to be. So I would say don't be shy about sharing personal faith stories and struggles, and also just kind of making students aware of all of the opportunity there is to grow and learn about God through the spiritual disciplines.
I think it is better to be real to people, to tell them what is real. Sometimes we go to the extreme of spirituality. That becomes unrealistic, in my view. And sometimes also we go to the extreme of atheism, which becomes unrealistic. So if you are realistic, you tell students what they are supposed to do in their daily lives. Otherwise, if you don't become real to students, they will explore reality on their own. And you might not be with them if they explore that reality. And I think that's the reason for backsliding. Many people backslide because they are taught in a way that do not seem real to them. And if they explore reality, they get their own way.